Picture this. It's 1280, somewhere on the endless Mongolian steppes. The sun's beating down mercilessly, and hundreds of warriors have gathered in a circle, their horses stamping impatiently in the dust. The air's thick with tension because what's about to happen has never been seen before. In the center of this circle stands a young woman, barely 20, facing off against a mountain of a man who's never lost a wrestling match in his entire life. The crowd falls dead silent. This isn't just any wrestling match. This is about to become the stuff of legends. The man she's facing has brought 100 horses as his wager, absolutely certain he'll finally be the one to defeat the undefeatable princess. What he doesn't know yet is that he's about to become just another story in the incredible tale of Khutulun, a woman who'd reshape Asian politics and become so legendary that her story would inspire one of the world's most famous operas 7 centuries later. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Let me take you back to the beginning, to a world where women were expected to be silent and invisible. A world where one remarkable woman decided she'd be neither. The year is 1260, and the Mongol Empire stretches from the Pacific Ocean to Europe's borders. It's the largest land empire in human history, a world built on conquest, strength, and the absolute rule of men. Into this world, a girl is born who'll turn every single assumption upside down. Her name is Khutulun, meaning bright moon in Mongolian. But there's nothing soft about her destiny. She's born to Kaidu Khan, a direct descendant of Genghis Khan himself. Her grandfather was Ogidi Khan, the third great Khan of the Mongol Empire. She's got 14 brothers, 14 princes who should inherit power while she fades into the background. That's what's supposed to happen. That's what everyone expects. Khutulun has other plans. Here's where her story gets interesting. Kaidu isn't your typical 13th century father, and Khutulun definitely isn't your typical daughter. From the moment she can walk, she's training alongside her brothers. Not playing with dolls or learning embroidery, she's learning to be a warrior. The training is absolutely brutal. Mongol children learn to ride before they can properly run. They're shooting arrows from horseback at full gallop by age 8. They survive on nothing but dried meat and mare's milk for weeks. They learn that weakness equals death. Khutulun doesn't just survive this training, she excels at it. By age 10, she's riding harder than boys twice her age. By 12, she's wrestling grown men to the ground. By 15, she's training with her father's elite guard and beating them. But she doesn't just match the men, she surpasses them. Imagine the scene, a training ground outside Kaidu's camp, dozens of seasoned warriors practicing combat. And right in the center, there's this teenage girl throwing battle-hardened soldiers to the dirt with techniques that leave them gasping. Her brothers watch with pride and something else, something that might be fear. Because they're realizing something that'll change everything. Their sister might be the strongest warrior among them all. By the time Khutulun reaches adulthood, her reputation spreads across the steppes like wildfire. Stories are told in camps from Mongolia to Persia about the princess who fights like a demon, the warrior who's never been defeated. Kaidu watches his daughter with growing admiration and growing concern. The political situation is complicated. The Mongol Empire has fractured into competing khanates. Kaidu's in constant conflict with Kublai Khan, who claims to be the great Khan of all Mongols. Alliances shift like sand, and marriages are weapons of diplomacy. Suitors start arriving at Kaidu's court. Princes, generals, wealthy merchants, all seeking Khutulun's hand. She refuses every single one. Her father presses her. "You must marry," he tells her. "It's expected. Your marriage could secure alliances we desperately need." And that's when Khutulun makes a proposal that becomes legendary. "I'll marry," she says, "but only to a man who can defeat me in wrestling. And every man who challenges me and loses must pay me 10 horses." The court is stunned into silence. Wrestling is sacred to the Mongols. It's a test of strength, skill, and honor. Khutulun's proposing to use it as a marriage contest, putting herself on equal footing with any man in the empire. Some call it arrogance. Others call it insanity. But Kaidu, after a long moment, smiles. "Very well," he says. "Let the challenges begin." The first challenger arrives within weeks, a prince from a neighboring territory, confident and strong. The match lasts less than 2 minutes. Khutulun moves like lightning, and before the prince understands what's happening, he's face down in the dirt. The crowd erupts, and Khutulun claims her 10 horses. Then comes the second challenger, then a third, 10th, 100th. Some are skilled wrestlers, others powerful men who believe raw strength will overcome her technique. Some study her previous matches, looking for weaknesses. None of it matters. Khutulun defeats them all. The collection grows. 10 becomes 100. 100 becomes 1,000. According to Marco Polo, who documented her story, she eventually accumulated over 10,000 horses from defeated suitors. 10,000. But here's what the legends don't always tell you. These weren't just victories. These were statements. Every time Khutulun stepped onto that wrestling ground, she was declaring to the entire Mongol world that she wasn't property to be traded. She was a warrior, an equal, and she'd choose her own fate. Then comes the match that stands above all others. A champion arrives from a distant khanate, a man who's never lost a wrestling match. He brings not 10 horses but 100, showing absolute confidence. He's massive, taller than most Mongols, with shoulders like a bull. He's defeated over 500 opponents and trained in multiple fighting styles. By every measure, he's the most formidable opponent Khutulun has ever faced. For the first time in years, people wonder, could this be the match where Khutulun finally loses? Even Kaidu shows concern. "You don't have to accept this challenge," he tells her privately. "This man is different." Khutulun looks at her father with unwavering eyes. "If I refuse now, everything I've built means nothing. I'll fight him, and I'll win." The day arrives and the entire camp watches. The champion performs the traditional eagle dance, powerful, confident. Then Khutulun enters, her movements fluid where his are aggressive, precise where his show raw power. The match begins. The champion lunges with terrifying speed, gets a grip, and starts to pull. The crowd gasps. No one has ever pulled Khutulun off balance before. But she doesn't resist the pull. She uses it. As he pulls her forward, she drops her weight, rotates, and suddenly his momentum works against him. He stumbles for just a fraction of a second. That's all she needs. Khutulun hooks her leg behind his, grabs his vest, and pulls. Physics does the rest. The champion crashes to the ground so hard that dust explodes around them. The crowd erupts in cheers that can probably be heard in the next territory. Khutulun stands, extends her arms in victory, and claims her 100 horses. Then she does something surprising. She helps him up and offers him a position in her father's army. "You're skilled," she tells him. "Your strength would be valuable in battle." It's both mercy and political genius. By converting defeated opponents into allies, Khutulun's building not just a legend but a power base. But being the greatest wrestler in the empire is just the beginning. What Khutulun does next takes her from legend to immortal. By 1275, the political situation reaches a breaking point. Kublai Khan claims authority over all Mongol territories. Kaidu refuses, seeing Kublai as corrupted by Chinese culture. War is inevitable. When Kaidu assembles his army, he makes a decision that shocks his generals. He appoints Khutulun as a commander. Not a figurehead, a real military commander with authority over thousands of warriors. The older generals protest. "She's a woman. The men won't follow her." Kaidu's response is simple: watch them. Khutulun's first test comes during a skirmish near the Talas River. She's leading 300 horsemen to flank the enemy when they discover a problem. The enemy has positioned a reserve force exactly where she planned to attack. In that moment, Khutulun makes a decision that reveals her tactical genius. Instead of retreating or forcing the attack, she splits her force. 200 riders continue making noise, creating the illusion of a major attack. The enemy reserve moves to intercept them. Meanwhile, Khutulun takes her remaining 100 riders and circles wider, staying hidden. By the time the enemy realizes what's happening, she's positioned behind their command. She leads the charge herself, her war cry freezing everyone's blood. The attack is devastating. And in the chaos, Khutulun does something that becomes her signature. She rides straight at the enemy general, leans from her saddle, and literally pulls him off his horse. She carries him away as a prisoner. The enemy forces see their general captured by a single warrior. Morale shatters. The battle becomes a rout. This becomes her pattern over the next 15 years. Khutulun participates in dozens of battles, commanding forces from hundreds to tens of thousands. She develops a reputation not just for strength but for intelligence in warfare. She studies enemies, adapts tactics, understands that Mongol warfare isn't just about overwhelming opponents. It's about mobility, deception, and psychological warfare. She excels at all of it. But here's what makes Khutulun exceptional. She doesn't just fight, she protects. In one incident, part of Kaidu's army is ambushed during a retreat. The rear guard is being cut to pieces. Khutulun doesn't wait for orders. She assembles 2,000 riders and leads a countercharge into the pursuing force. What the enemy expects is a desperate attack. What they get is a perfectly executed assault that hits like a hammer, punches through their formation, wheels around, and attacks again. The pursuit breaks. The rear guard is saved. Her troops call her the princess who fights like 10 men, but those who serve under her have a different name, the shield of the people. But all this success creates an unexpected problem. By 1290, Khutulun has become the most powerful of Kaidu's children. She commands armies, wins battles, and has her father's absolute trust. Kaidu is growing old. He needs to think about succession. By tradition, one of his 14 sons should be heir. But Kaidu begins considering something radical. What if Khutulun succeeded him instead? When whispers of this possibility circulate, the reaction is explosive. Her brothers are outraged. Advisors warn that naming a woman heir could fracture his power base. The pressure is immense. One night, Khutulun approaches her father privately. "You must choose one of my brothers," she tells him. "None of them have your skills," Kaidu replies. "That doesn't matter," she says. "If you name me heir, this family will tear itself apart. Everything we've built will collapse." It's a moment of stunning selflessness, choosing family unity over personal ambition. When Kaidu becomes seriously ill in 1301, Khutulun makes her final masterstroke. She gathers her brothers and proposes supporting Orus, not the strongest but the wisest and most diplomatic. "I'll serve as his military commander," she declares. It's brilliant political strategy. By stepping aside and proposing a compromise candidate, she prevents civil war. When Kaidu dies, Orus becomes Khan, and Khutulun becomes his primary military commander. She gives up the throne she could have claimed, but in doing so, she saves her father's legacy and her family's unity. After Kaidu's death, pressure mounts for Khutulun to marry. She's in her 40s now, having spent 20 years defying expectations. Finally, she makes another unexpected choice. She selects a husband. He's not a prince or champion wrestler. He's a relatively ordinary soldier from her father's ranks, someone she trusts, someone who'll never try to control her. The court is scandalized, but this is vintage Khutulun. Decisions on her own terms, always. The marriage is quiet, and notably, she doesn't give up her military command. She continues leading armies, riding into battle, being the warrior she's always been. Her husband becomes something unusual, a man defined by his wife's legend and apparently content with it. Here's where Khutulun's story takes its most incredible turn. 700 years after her death, her legend resurfaces in the most unexpected way. Marco Polo, the Venetian traveler, documents her story in his famous travels. European readers are fascinated but skeptical. A woman warrior defeating men? Surely exaggeration. But the story persists. In the 18th century, Italian playwright Carlo Gozzi writes Turandot, inspired by Khutulun's wrestling challenges. Then Puccini adapts it into one of the world's most famous operas. Millions watch this opera, seeing a strong princess who refuses to submit to any man's authority. Almost none realize they're watching a story that began with a real woman on the Mongol steppes 700 years earlier. Throughout history, male chroniclers couldn't accept that a woman achieved what Khutulun achieved through skill alone. So they invented explanations. She must have used poison, witchcraft, murdered her brothers. Modern historians have investigated these claims thoroughly. The conclusion? The accusations were almost certainly fabricated. Think about it. If she'd actually poisoned her father or murdered brothers, why would she voluntarily step aside from succession? The real scandal isn't what she allegedly did. It's what people needed to believe to make her existence acceptable. She was so exceptional that they had to invent crimes to explain her. Khutulun died in the early 14th century. The exact date is unknown, her resting place never found. But her legacy endures. She proved that the only limits on human potential are the ones we accept. That tradition is just the opinion of dead people. That strength comes in forms society doesn't always recognize. She was a wrestler who never lost, a warrior who captured enemies with her bare hands, a commander who led 40,000 soldiers, a princess who chose her own path. And she did it all without apology, without permission, without compromise. In Mongolia today, grandmothers still tell their granddaughters stories of the princess stronger than any man, the warrior who rode like thunder, the woman who proved nothing could cage someone determined to be free. They end with a simple phrase, be like Khutulun. Be strong. Be brave. Be yourself no matter what the world says. That's her real legacy, not just the battles won but the possibility she represented. The door she kicked open for everyone who came after. 7 centuries later, we're still telling her story. We're still inspired by her courage. Because some legends are too powerful to die, some stories too important to forget. Khutulun proved that heroism doesn't have a gender, that strength comes in many forms, and that one person refusing to accept limitations can change what everyone believes possible. In a world that told her to be quiet, she roared. In a world that told her to be weak, she became invincible. In a world that told her to disappear, she became unforgettable. The only permission you need to be extraordinary is your own. Be like Khutulun. If this story moved you, hit that like button to help others discover these forgotten heroes. Subscribe for more incredible stories of warriors, rulers, and rebels whose names should be legendary. Drop a comment. What surprised you most about Khutulun's story? And if you know another forgotten hero whose story deserves telling, share their name. Your suggestion could become our next episode. History isn't just about the past. It's about understanding how we got here and imagining where we can go. Every forgotten hero we remember is a door that opens. Khutulun opened doors 700 years ago that are still opening today.